Hello and welcome to the Car Care Now channel. In today's video, we have a Lexus NX. We did a review on the Lexus NX when it first came out back in 2022. We did the NX 450h Plus. But in today's video, I want to revisit the NX, see how it's doing as we enter 2025. We're going to do a proper technical review. We'll talk about all the trims that they have, all different engine options that they have. Take a look underneath it, inside and out, to see if the NX is still a good buy after a few years that it came out or not, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. And there is a lot of powertrain options for the NX, which is a nice thing, but let's get right into them. Technically, there is two engine options for the NX. The A25A, which is 2.5 liter four-cylinder, and then there is the T24A, which is 2.4 liter four-cylinder turbo. So here is how the options are distributed of the powertrain. You have the NX 250, which has the A25A FKS, naturally aspirated engine. We'll talk about the details of the engine, and an 8-speed transmission. The NX 350 will have a 2.4 liter turbo. That is kind of the performance model because it makes a lot more power as a turbocharged engine. That would be the T24A FTS, made it to an 8-speed transmission as well. That is actually the same powertrain as the one in the RX 350. So that's a much bigger car, and you have the smaller car with the more powerful engine. Then we jump into the hybrids and the plug-in hybrids. You have, like this one, the NX 350h, which has the A25A FXS, made it to a 4th generation hybrid system. We'll talk about that as well. So eCVT, whatnot. And then you have the NX 450h Plus, which also has the same powertrain as this, but it is a plug-in hybrid. To make a long story short, let's dive into the engines. The A25A across them, even the hybrid, non-hybrid, is similarly constructed, a little bit of difference internal, but the basic construction is the same. So let's go through it real quick. The very top, you have a plastic valve cover, pretty decent quality valve cover. We haven't had any issues with these. This engine's been out for a while, since 2018. And then 2-piece cylinder head, roller rockers, hydraulic lifters, all the good stuff. It has 2 timing chains, one between the cams to the crank, one for the oil pump. You do have a electronic VVTi on the intake, oil controlled on the exhaust. The block is aluminum, spiny or spinny liners, so they are not serviceable if they get damaged. Variable oil pump, so the oil pump can vary the oil pressure, and it's computer controlled, which is pretty cool. The engine does have a cooled EGR. Nothing really about it. The cool thing is we haven't been having issues with these so far since 2018. It's been some time. So far, so good. It's been quiet. So I hope that remains that way, not like the 3rd generation Prius, for example, which had all kinds of EGR problems. But moving away from that, the fuel system here is a D4S system. So you have both direct and port injection. They could work either or together. It's a very, very sophisticated system, how it works. But you don't have issues with carbon buildup here, which is good. Now, the cooling system here is pretty interesting. You have, on all models, even the gasoline-only ones, you have an electronic water pump, which is pretty cool. It gives it precise control. You do have a very sophisticated, coolant distribution valves, and so it can send coolant where it needs to be. So these engines are known for a very fast warm-up. Early on in the years of this engine, they did have some issues with the valves. Some of the valves were having a chronic issue, but so far, so good. The later years have seen an improvement and things are better. This engine is, for the most part, has been establishing a good track record. There has been, of course, the odd ones that had issues here and there. Oiling system in this engine is a little bit sensitive. Don't go using a very thick oil with this engine, because that programming of the oil pump is based off what oil weight it uses. So most of them will use 0W16. Some of them will use 0W8. But with this engine, stick with the oil weight. Or if you go over it by a little bit. Don't all of a sudden put 10W40 in it. That's a bad idea, just letting you know. Now, the T24A. This is an engine that came out somewhere around 23, give or take. First car was the Highlander that I recall. Now the Tacoma has it, RX has it, many other models has it now. So the T24A is actually based off of this engine. It has the exact mechanical construction as this engine, except the direct injection. See, the A25A, the direct injectors are underneath the intake manifold. They go on the side. The T24A has them on the top. That's unfortunately complicates things a lot for service. If you have to pull a valve cover for anything, it's a major operation. Now you're pulling injectors and replacing seals and the whole 9 yards. A lot more complicated engine than this. And because it is turbocharged. So that engine is interesting. It is a vacuum controlled turbocharger, which is pretty cool. And then the intercooler is a liquid to air intercooler. In my book, I call this is the good old school and then the good new school. You have very simple wastegate that is vacuum operated. They cannot get simpler than that. You don't have some electronic part in a really hot area. And then the liquid to air intercooler is actually super efficient. Keeps the piping to a minimal because everything is integrated into the intake manifold. You don't have piping running in the front and all the complication of an air-to-air intercooler. And the best part is they're a lot more efficient. They do add a second coolant system. Yes, I understand that can be seen as a complication. It's actually not. It's a little electric coolant pump, which we already have an electric water pump here, and another reservoir. And that's about it. Things are very simple there. Now, the T24A, some folks will be concerned, well, it's a turbo engine. Folks, we are in the era of turbo engines, and what I like about the NX is you still have a choice of a non-turbo engine. It's going to make less power, of course, but you have the option. I love it when the consumer has options, and that's what they did here. If you don't feel comfortable about the turbo engine, well, just buy the 250. You don't have the turbo engine, you have an engine that has a track record, and we're done. If you want a car with more power, just buy the turbo one. Just make sure you take care of it so it would last, because I don't have reliability concerns with the turbo engine as long as we are understanding that the more you have in a car, the more likely things are going to go south. So you got to maintain them and take care of them. There are specific maintenance requirements and kind of operational habits that you need to know about turbos. I'll leave a video right here for you if you want or interested in that, but I'm not concerned about the reliability, but you got to take care of them. Let's talk about the hybrid system and briefly on the plug-in hybrid system of the 450h Plus. So this one, the 350h. This is the concern that I have with Lexus, and I got a small rant coming up here. Why does this have a fourth generation hybrid system? There's absolutely nothing wrong with the hybrid system. The fourth gen, beautiful system, very smooth and everything. But why is the higher end cars get the options last? I mean, you go look at a Camry, has fifth gen hybrid system. Corolla Cross, just kind of an economy car. Fifth generation hybrid system. Expensive Lexus NX 350h, fourth generation. I wish that was not the case. Speaking of that, this is a standard hybrid system from Toyota. eCVT transmission, not to be mistaken with the regular CVT. This is one of the most reliable transmissions Toyota ever made, actually the automotive industry ever made. 2 motors inside, few planetary gear sets, actually a super simple transmission, very robust and reliable. Controlling everything, what sends power to what, is the inverter converter assembly. It sits under the hood right here, takes the place of the battery. That's why the battery's in the back. We'll look at it in a bit. But keeping things up to par with Toyota's hybrid system. This fourth generation is very smooth, very capable, but once you've driven a fifth generation hybrid system, you will notice that it is better. They figured out a way to make it better, even though it's not a full-on redesign, but I still wish they would have put a fifth gen here. But fourth gen is good. It's very good. It's very smooth. I like that everything here is well made. And I opened the hood here. If you take the Lexus badge out, this is a RAV4, and the maintenance will reflect that. This is not some exclusive, high-end, very expensive, and you need a special. It's a RAV4 powertrain, folks. And if we look at the T24A, it's a Highlander powertrain, folks. There isn't much about it. One interesting observation with the NX, and I don't know why they're doing this. So the NX has 2 hood latches. It's because one was not good enough. Of course, it's a massive hood. It's actually the same size as a RAV4, but this has 2 hood latches, and we have this little interesting spring that puts tension on the thing. But interestingly, I thought the spring was supposed to pop the hood up because they used to put a little rubber grommet, but they still have that rubber grommet. So what's the point of this? I don't know. Small observation I thought I'd mention. Let's take a look underneath the Lexus NX. The front's all covered up. You do have these interesting shapes right here. I don't know why they are there. In case you look, just look nice. You have a little design. They left the opening here for the subframe. This is where you lift the car from if you need to. I like that they left it exposed. This is a style that Toyota Lexus is using across almost all their models today. This opening right here, this is where your oil filter and drain plug is. Pretty simple. Moving away from that to the front suspension, you do have an aluminum knuckle with a bolt-on wheel bearing. You do have a steel lower control arm with a separate ball joint. Toyota's been using this style for a long time. You do have a dual piston caliper in the front. You do have an aluminum sway bar link, which I wish that was not the case, but that's how they do it. You notice this one does not have adaptive struts or anything. They're just regular McPherson struts, nothing really out of the ordinary about them. Then we walk back, you notice this one does have the oil cooler. If you come around and look up, this engine does have an oil cooler. It's kind of an interesting spot for it. It's all the way in the back, but it does have an oil cooler, and that is pretty cool. Moving back, the exhaust takes some of a turn, kind of runs along the side. It is a decent quality exhaust, with the exception of this one weld. If it was it's a little bit nicer, that would have been okay as well, but it's okay. We're hoping that is one off. I like that the covering goes almost to the edge. They did leave this area open, but I do like that it has covers all across. Fuel tank sits here because it's a hybrid. Fuel tank goes all the way to here. That's why the exhaust goes to the side, because the battery is on top. Now we come to the back here. This is your MGR unit, the unit that drives the back. It is very similar to that of the RAV4. If we come around though, and this is something folks has been talking about a lot, this is the connector that they've had some issues with them, but this one, it's open at the bottom, which means it is the updated one. So 2024 and up, you don't have to worry even before that, but just saying that in case you read about it online. So look at the rear suspension. I feel like when you look at one Toyota rear suspension and Lexus, they're all the same now, this is the benefit of using the same platform. Very similar, familiar and simple suspension. Trailing arm, few control arms, up and down. Spring is separate from the shock. Everything is standard setup here. Aluminum knuckle here with a bolt-on bearing as well. You do have a single piston caliper with the integrated park and brake motor on it. The muffler kind of goes sideways. You do have dual tips, but they don't go through the bumper or anything. I like that they did some cover here, which is nice. Same thing on the other side. They didn't just leave it completely wide open. Could have been nice to cover it all the way to the top, but they didn't, and at least we have something. And the last thing I want to show you guys is, run flat tires. Let me translate that for you. This is a disaster, is what that is. And then the next thing is, for some reason, Lexus is switching slowly to, instead of lug nuts, they're using lug bolts. So these are actually lug bolts. I don't know what was wrong with the other one, or are they trying to compete with the Germans? I wish they would get rid of these and put regular nuts back on, because these are kind of a pain for service. Let's take a look at the outside and the inside of the Lexus NX, starting with the front. I'm trying to put to words why this grille looks off. I am not against the spindle grille. Some folks are, and I understand that. But this particular one, there's something off. I feel like they started the design language thinking of like how the new RX is. It has a little bit of a lesser spindle grille, but this one halfway through they just said, let's put spindle grille. It just feels like this section is very small and this section is huge. It's almost like when you take a picture and you like stretch it one way. That's how it feels like. It just doesn't feel right. And then the nose is so long and this comes straight down. It's an interesting look. We'll leave it at that, I suppose. Because I like everything from here back this way. Headlights are really nice. Everything is very nice. Just the grille needs some work. Let's put it this way. Now the hood features, there isn't much going on. You do have this one line that kind of comes in and disappears. Same thing on the other side. There isn't much going on, which is nice, but yeah, I don't know what happened there. Let's put it this way. Moving along this side, I mean, this is a expensive premium car, and we have non-painted panels. Don't know why they do that. It's just, why is there even an option to have a non-painted panel on a luxury car? That's how they do this. Decent sized mirrors, which I like. Everything on the side looks pretty standard. This section right here does remind you of the old one. This is a tiny window. I wish this would have continued, honestly, even though it would have looked a little strange. If this would have continued forward and went that way, it would have gave you a lot of visibility. Visibility here is a little bit compromised because of this tiny glass, because of the swooping design they had to put here. Then we had to talk about the elephant in the room. The door handles. Really dislike the door handles. Let's put it this way. It's very un-Lexus-like. First off, let's talk about the good stuff. You have a lock-unlock on all 4 doors, which is to be expected in this segment, in this price point. This is a luxury car. But then you notice these are not actual handles. There's a button here. This is Lexus e-latch system. So basically, if you're about to open the door, it's going to check your blind spot using the sensor. And if it detects a bicyclist, a pedestrian, a car coming here, it won't allow you to open the door for safety. Now that sounds great, but the hurdles and complications they had to go through for this, it's just ridiculous. First, everybody's gonna come in and try to pull on your door. Hey, push the button. Now granted, you will get used to it, but your passengers will never get used to it. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if the battery dies, they give you a manual release. Very, very flimsy, because you own an NX, you didn't know there's actually a manual release on each door. The driver's door, you do have the key to unlock the car, but here's how that looks like on the inside. See, every single passenger that will sit in your car for the first time, they will be like, well, how do you operate this? They'll end up pulling it. That is actually the manual release. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to push the button and push on the door, and then it'll open. I don't understand the complication. I think we better spend time educating folks about look before you open the door. I think that would be better. Moving on from these, they're just ridiculous. Coming to the back here, I really like what they've done here, honestly. The only section this middle section, this kind of comes out, it's kind of strange, but I really like the taillights. I like that they wrote Lexus down. That is actually a pretty cool touch. It just gives it a classy look, not just the logo. I think it looks pretty good. On the badges, they had to actually write NX350H because there's so many trims, as we talked about. There's so many engine options, all-wheel drive. This is a power door, of course. Let's take a look inside here. So you do have this nice aluminum piece here with lit Lexus and NX. Usually they love to put Lexus and Lexus, but this one at least they put the model, which means this piece is specific to this car, which is cool. Looking at the back here, you do have dual motors. They are both motors. They both go into the hatch, which is the style that we like for service and simplicity. Decent room here. This is about the same size as a RAV4. You do have some storage cover here. Now underneath this, you do have a little bit of storage. Nothing to brag home about. A little bit of storage here. The battery, 12-volt battery, is right here. It's nice and easy, accessible. I can live with that. No spare tire, of course, because this has run flat tires. Talk about that in a second. But let's talk about the seats. So you do have buttons right here that fold the seats down. Once they sometimes have their mind of their own. The cool thing is, it's actually, you can put the seats back up as well. That is pretty cool. You don't expect that in a small SUV like this, but I guess this is the Lexus touch, I suppose. So that is pretty cool. You do have a little light here, though this light could have been bigger a little bit. Lock and just close the back door here. It's pretty nice. That's becoming kind of standard in the automotive industry. Decent speed door. I don't think it's the slowest that we've seen from Lexus. If you want to see that, go look at the Lexus LS 500. That would be the slowest trunk ever. Let's look at the inside. There are interesting stuff on the inside here. So this interior, I have good stuff and I have strange stuff. Let's talk about them. The first thing is the initial impression when you get into this interior, you know you stepped into a luxury car. And that first impression is very important. The leather is very nice. Everything you touch has nice materials. Even the plastic feels nice. Now, this piano black, some will dislike it because it gets dirty, but it looks nice. The layout of this interior is nice. Now, let's talk about some of the good stuff and some of the not so good stuff. I like that this interior, for the most part, is not over the top and gimmicky. It's still very functional. I love the center console that opens on both ways. This is a Lexus thing. I like that they cared. Like, this is, although it's not the nicest material on the planet, some manufacturers are really using nice stuff, but the pillars are all covered. Usually you get in a RAV4, this is heavily based off of, this is plastic. This is covered in the same material as a headliner. Little stuff like that is what the difference between this and a RAV4 is. You want this to be a nicer RAV4, and you immediately notice that. But with that comes some gimmicks. First one is, which is the biggest one, where is my HVAC controls? You have a couple controls on the volume, the temperature, but everything else is in the screen. Now, the screen is the latest infotainment system from Toyota Lexus. It is decent, it is fast, but this is a Lexus. This is where we count on cars not having gimmicky stuff in the screen. I mean, just make the screen a little bit smaller and put the controllers here. Would have been perfectly fine. People would like that better. Keeps it simpler, but fortunately they didn't do that. But that fades in the shadows in comparison with the next gimmick, the steering wheel controls. I don't know about you, and if you are that person, do please inform the rest of us, because I don't remember the last person that complained that the steering wheel controls are too basic, too boring. They really went to the next level with these controls. You have to use the heads-up display to operate these. They're actually not labeled. So they're touch capacitive. You put your finger, it'll show you what the command is, and you have these two buttons that switch the whatever menu you're on. So here's the thing. If I drive in the morning and I put my sunglasses, I can barely see that heads-up display anymore. So now I have to kind of hope that I remember what these did. In some futuristic car that no average Joe will buy, I get it. But this is a Lexus. We're supposed to keep things simple, elegant, and simple, and reliable, and well-made. This is not nice. The good thing is, everything else beyond these two things, it is normal touch button and whatnot. Shifter is a Prius shifter. This is what I used to call it, but now I gave it an upgrade. This is an LC500 shifter. It's exactly the same. Literally exactly the same. Which is fine. I think this is one of the lesser gimmicky shifters that are electronics. Much better than the rotary dial. We've seen some manufacturers come up with different ones that are similar, but this is one of the least gimmicky ones. I suppose it works. You do have some controls here. Brake hold, EV mode, this is a hybrid. Some drive mode, park and brake is here. Your main drive mode is here, which is cool. Wireless chargers right here, which is nice. And with that, let's go take a look at the back seat. So that was my driving position, and this in the front seat here. I'm 5'7". I actually like this. This is not terrible. It's not the roomiest, biggest place to be in, but it's decent for the size of this SUV. I do have decent headroom, even though this has a sunroof. I like that. Now, let's talk about how is this car to drive. I like that most folks will look at the NX and assume, well, why don't I just go buy a RAV4 and save myself a lot of money? It's the same thing. And you're right. It is the same thing, except this is a lot nicer. I mean, they did a lot to this. They didn't just put a body in the interior and call it a day. This is a lot smoother, a lot more refined, and quieter than a RAV4. One of the biggest complaints about the RAV4 is the ride noise level. It's very loud. The RAV4 is super loud. This is a lot better. A lot better. You immediately notice you are in a much nicer car than the RAV4, even though they're identical. That's, I guess, where your money... This is where, if you get in a top trim RAV4 and you feel like, I want something nicer. I want a nicer place to be that is quieter. Don't look further, because this is exactly the same size and all the functions of the RAV4, just a lot nicer. With some gimmicks, but there is that. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the Lexus NX. And this is not something new to it. It's from day one that this generation came out. First thing is the e-latch system for the door handles. Very gimmicky, which I admire, the safety aspect of it, but it's very un-Lexus-like. Lexus usually is conservative. They do things based on reliability and kind of keeping things simple, but very nice. Not this one. It's not executed super well, and it's just, every time you have a passenger in your car, it's a fight with the door. You have to explain to them, and it gets very annoying. For you, you'll get used to it, but it remains. And please know how to activate them, read them in the owner's manual, or you've seen us talk about it in this video. In case of an emergency, if their battery dies, at least you know how to open the door and not kind of, okay, now what? That is important that you know that, and whoever drives the car in your family, you let them know that things happen, batteries die. The second thing is the steering wheel controls. Super unnecessary, and I don't see exactly what they do different than the steering wheel from the previous generation. For example, I don't think anybody would have complained if they put the exact same steering wheel, which did exactly the same thing, because driving on a sunny day with sunglasses, you can barely see the heads-up display, and now you kind of have to go by muscle memory, just remembering, okay, I think this was the skip, I think this was this. It just doesn't make sense. Why don't we put buttons? We don't need to reinvent the wheels sometimes. Speaking of wheels, this has run-flat tires. The worst invention ever. And Toyota and Lexus keeps going at it. They are super expensive. When you have a flat with them, they're not exactly, you're going to be driving on them long, and they'll scare you. And the biggest problem with them is they don't last. And they drop your gas mileage, and they sound horrible when they wear down. Why the insistence? I understand you don't have space to put a spare tire. Just put an inflate kit and put regular tires, or at least make it an option. You're kind of stuck with these tires. When they wear off very prematurely and very early, just replace them with the regulars. That is an advice you'll thank me for later. So that is the Lexus NX. Honestly, I like the Lexus NX. I don't want to say it's a quintessential Lexus, because it does have a few things that are standing against it, but this is how I see the buying process of an NX. You went to drive a Toyota RAV4, and you felt it's too loud, too basic, too plasticky. It just felt not a nice place to be. And there are folks who will see the RAV4 as the best place to be, and some folks will not. It's just a matter of taste and opinion. This has everything that the RAV4 offers. Powertrains, actually you have more powertrains than a RAV4, but it's very refined, in the Lexus way refined, the old school way. The inside, as soon as you open the door and you step in, you immediately know you are in something a lot nicer than a RAV4. That is immediate. They've executed the interior for the most part really well. But what is more impressive than the interior is this is a small car. Usually getting small cars to be very quiet and very refined is difficult. With this, they did a very good job. It's very quiet, very insulated. It's not a exhilarating drive, if you would, but it's decent. And they gave you enough options in the powertrain department where you can pick exactly what you're looking for. You have many non-hybrid options, you have hybrid option, and you have a plug-in hybrid option. I like that. There's variety for everybody. Now, this is not a perfect car, and in my opinion, there are a few things that stand against it. The loyal Lexus buyer looks for, number one, a reliable car that is nice. Now, the reliability part, probably the turbo engine will stand at the bottom of that. Doesn't mean it's bad, but if you want the truth, that is potentially the least one of all of them in the NX lineup. Then the gimmicky HVAC controls that are in the screen, they work, but again, that is one more thing that folks will dislike about it being that way. But the biggest thing that I truly dislike about it is the steering wheel controls. If they took the steering wheel out of the previous NX, for example, put it here, nobody would have said a word, flat out. But the biggest thing is the door handle situation. It's great for safety and everything, but a lot had to go into them. And I hope they age well and we don't have issues, but the potential for them to have issues in the future, We'll find out, but it's a high potential. Let's put it this way. The run flat tire situation, we can live with. You can switch them out. Yeah, we don't have a spare tire, but again, in 2024, 2025, a lot of cars don't have spare tires. So we have ways around that, but everything else, kind of don't have ways around it. I truly like this car. What I like the most about it is you have a lot of options to choose from, powertrain-wise. See, mostly manufacturers will focus on trims and options and gizmos and whatever. Here, they give you a lot of options of powertrains. That's slowly disappearing, folks. You'll have just one powertrain and million option packages. No, here we have different powertrains. And I like that. There is an NX for everybody looking for one. It's specific. There's the high power ones, and there's low power ones, there's the fuel efficient ones, and just the basic ones. There is a choice for everybody. And I'm glad that they kept that going in 2025. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.